Late, you dickheads.
What a meathead.
Screw that guy. You know he tells people I'm a puke freak?
It's finally time to go over another DC show with Peacemaker Season 2. We're going to be breaking down Episode 1, going over those Easter eggs and references, going over that ending, and talking about how it fits into the DCEU after Season 1 took place in the DCEU. Well, I think James Gunn has done it perfectly and fit it exactly how I would want it to fit into the new DCU, and I can't wait to talk about it. But before we get into it, I just want to say that this episode was a lot of fun. I've been waiting for Peacemaker to come back, and I'm so glad there's a Season 2, because with the chaoticness that this show is, with the amount of obscenity that happens in it, it's just like a great show to watch. Something that's not like PG, we get a little bit more of adult stakes, and it feels like not your classical superhero show, and I really enjoy that part of it. However, let's jump into that breakdown and we'll talk about some of the other stuff I liked while we go through it. As the show starts off giving us a recap of what happened last season with some slight changes and how it fits into the DCU. Even giving us a quick voiceover saying the events took place in the DCU to state that this is in the new universe that started with Creature Commandos and continued with Superman. And it's pretty much everything is canon from that last season except with some characters and lines completely switched out of it. Like, the Justice League was just swapped with the Justice Gang, having Mr. Terrific, Superman, Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, and even Supergirl showing up, which yes, technically Superman and Supergirl are not part of the Justice Gang, but I could see that if there's an alien invasion happening, they would call up Superman and be like, hey, yo, I need your help. Because we learned from Superman that Superman has worked with them before, he's just not part of the team. And I'm assuming what happened as well is Supergirl was there, Superman's like, hey, I need your help, there's an alien invasion, and that's why she was put in that lineup as well. And we even had the Justice Gang line dropped as well, where Abadeo was calling her mother Amanda Waller, and instead of saying Justice League, she says Justice Gang. So just showing that they literally just changed a couple things, which I think this is the perfect way to do it. It's the way to include and make it so that everything is canon. Just a quick retcon, boom. Easy works just like that. And it kind of goes with what James Gunn was saying as well recently, where if any of the actors don't want to play the respective characters anymore and he doesn't want to kill them off, he's just going to recast them, which honestly, perfectly fine with me. I'm kind of annoyed that TV shows and stuff didn't do this because we used to do this way back in the day. Look at Iron Man. Don Cheadle replaced Terrence Howard, so like it works like this. We had Edward Norton get replaced by Mark Ruffalo, so I feel like these things work and we could just replace the characters, and we all know the character is still the same respective character, he just looks different because he's played by a different actor. I think it's not too hard to conceptualize, and I like that he's going to be doing that. And it is nice to see that some of the stuff is canonized from the DCEU. To be fair, all of it has to do with James Gunn's projects, just like how the Suicide Squad, they're keeping those events as well, how Peacemaker killed Rick Flag, so Rick Flag Sr. is going to be going after him, because they referenced it in Creature Commandos, and they referenced it in this season. But they even added a new scene as well in this, where Peacemaker talks about how he threw up on Green Lantern, and how Green Lantern liked it, just making fun of Guy Gardner. And then instead of having the Flash and Aquaman being the ones that talk to Peacemaker in that little instance there, instead, we have it being Hawkgirl and Green Lantern, which is just nice to see. Just continuing kind of what they did before with swapping out some of the characters and making it so it fits into the DCU. But that was our little intro, and I'm just happy to see how they fit it all in, and I'm glad to see it worked in some way. And I think it works perfectly. But then we cut to Eagly waking up Peacemaker in his home, which is honestly just like what a dog would do. They want to go outside, so they wake up their owner. But instead of going outside, he brings Eagly into the quantum unfolding chamber because it's cold outside and he doesn't want Eagly flying out in the snow. So he takes him into the never-ending space that he has where all his gear is and lets Eagly roam free, which we then see an alien pop out, which apparently has no connection to DC Comics. At least that's what everyone's been saying online, and I wasn't able to find anything either. But it seems like it could be like a little runoff joke, as we just have this like crypt keeper who's within Peacemaker's little dimension there. But in the end, we did have Eagly end up going to the different door that led into a different dimension where Peacemaker's family were actually heroes. And it's interesting to see how they did this here, because Eagly was the one that went to its door. So like an animal, it's going somewhere where it recognized. So did this mean that Eagly might be possible from this dimension? Maybe Augie, Peacemaker's evil father, took Eagly from the dimension and brought him over to his Peacemaker so that he could have Eagly as a pet? And he's just been living in the wrong universe this entire time? At least That could make sense. Either that or there's another Eagly who was also flying around in the dimension and Peacemaker got them mixed up. But it also does beg the question as well, is if there more than one door that leads to another alternate version of Peacemaker? Because if there's this one, we got the alien Crypt Keeper. Are there more in this gigantic space that could lead into other universes? I'm curious to see if we're going to be seeing that in the future. But when Peacemaker does enter this new reality, he does see a couple things that they like to focus on, like the key they got for the city of Evergreen, where it shows the top trio. His father, him, and his brother were all heroes in this universe. We even get to see the White Dragon's mask as it's sitting on the shelf in the study. And then we see Augie as well, where we have Peacemaker just absolutely terrified because he sees his father alive after he shot him last season. So it's just interesting to see this and how his brother Keith is alive and he's a hero. It's just like really cool to learn this other reality exists and how his life could have been so much better in this one place instead of how he was treated growing up with all the trauma about losing his brother, about having him be the one who didn't, his father blame him, have his father be a goddamn crazy maniac that tried to kill him. So it's like, it's interesting to see how his life was completely different in this new universe. And then we get the next amazing dance intro. I love that they kept the theme from the last season, just giving us some fun, showing off some of the characters and giving us a new look. Keith's superhero suit, the White Dragon in this universe, and seeing Harcourt as well. So just cool to see some of this stuff. And we also got to see Michael Rooker, who's going to be playing a character in this season that's apparently going to be going after Eagly and is Eagly's nemesis. He's a big game hunter, and I feel like that's going to be interesting, especially after Michael Rooker played Savant during the Suicide Squad. I wonder if they'll drop a little reference to that, where maybe Peacemaker will be like, hey, I recognize you. Why do you look like this guy? And maybe they'll reference it. Who knows? Then it jumps 6 months, where we then have Adebayo picking up Peacemaker to take him to his interview with the Justice Gang and Maxwell Lord. And as they're driving there, and we have Peacemaker talking about how the Justice Gang has pretty much roasted him before and made fun of him and joked about him being from the Jersey Shore. And then when they do get to the location, we do get a toy store that's called Crank Toys, which is a reference to the Toy Maker. It's a reference to the Batman animated series, which in that universe, Toy Maker was the owner of Crank Co. He was a talented toy maker that made very dangerous toys that weren't suitable for children. Bruce Wayne shut down his company because it was a danger to children, which then led to Cosmo Crank going after Bruce Wayne, swearing to get his revenge by killing him, and then having the Batman stop him, which was a nice little reference to the animated series and another DC project from the past. Then we had a little bunny girl running out crying, and you might be wondering, who the hell is this? Because that ain't no hero. In the comics, the White Rabbit is a villain. She first appeared in Batman The Dark Knight #1 from 2011. It was a New 52 storyline in Gotham City, and her name is Jana Hudson. Now, it makes me question why she was there. Like, are they going to be doing it where some people who are kind of morally gray, not super villains, you know, they're trying to be better. Maybe they're the ones trying to join the Justice Gang, because a lot of the bigger heroes don't really care, at least right now. But it does beg the question why they were interviewing the White Rabbit, unless it was just a nice little Easter egg to throw some more Gotham characters in this, because we did get more Gotham references later down the line in this episode. While Peacemaker is walking to the door as well, we do see a butterfly behind the security guard on the wall, which is kind of just a reference to last season and how they took down the alien race that looked like butterflies. So cool that they put that in there. But we have Peacemaker going to see Maxwell Lord, who in this universe is running the Justice Gang. While he's interviewing Peacemaker with Hawkgirl and Green Lantern, they just completely make fun of him the entire time, but they also question about how he's a murderer. He was thrown in Belle Reve for murdering people, and it kind of shows us who Peacemaker is. Like, we already know who he is, of course, but it's showing us a little bit more of a recap of what he's trying to do. He was a murderer. He was doing stuff for the wrong reasons, but now he's trying to become a hero. He's trying to get better. He's trying to overcome the trauma that he's gone through. So it's showing us what his journey is going to be from this season. He started last season trying to become that hero, but now it's really pushing him forward where he does want to become that hero, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they do that. And it's just honestly a fun scene of them just cracking jokes at Peacemaker as Peacemaker just sits there and listens to them until he gets mad and leaves. However, you might be wondering who Maxwell Lord is if you've never read a comic or didn't see that horrible Wonder Woman 84 movie that I still have yet to see, which I still need to watch it because I still need to make my video called What Went Wrong with the DCEU, which I'm maybe partial the way through. I still got ways to go. I still got so many movies to watch, but it's hard to go. But I'm getting off track. Now, in the comics, Maxwell Lord is a powerful businessman and was the manager of the Justice League International, which I'm still pretty sure the Justice League Gang is definitely going to be turned into the Justice League International at some point in a future project. Maybe it'll happen at the end of this one. I doubt it. I feel like it'll come in a different movie, but we will see. I just don't think they're going to keep that Justice Gang for a long time. And Maxwell Lord first appeared in Justice League #1 from 1987. So he's been around for a long time. He's also been a pretty big villain, so I'm assuming that at some point in time he is going to be changing into that villain, but we still probably got a ways to go until we get to that point. Also, there was a nice little Big Belly Burger reference in there as well, as Green Lantern's cup was a Big Belly Burger cup, which Big Belly Burger is an iconic fast food restaurant from the DC universe seen within a lot of DC projects like The Flash, Arrow, and the animated series and the comics as well. But after Peacemaker leaves that, we end up catching up with Harcourt, and we find out that she's getting rejected from the NSA and all the other agencies because she is toxic masculinity, but also because Waller is definitely making it so that she cannot join any of the other government agencies, even though Waller is not in charge of Argus right now, so she still has the connections to prevent Harcourt from getting anywhere. All because of what happened last season with Adebayo telling the world about what they were doing with the Project Butterfly. Now, this is also another retcon from the DCEU, because in the other universe, we did see that Harcourt was at Black Adam, helping the Justice Society put him in that prison underwater, and then on top of it, she was at the end of Shazam recruiting him for the Justice Society. So in that universe, Harcourt was still working for a Waller even after everything, but in this universe, Waller had thrown her to the wolves and kind of ruined her chance at a career within the government. So it's interesting to see how some of their lives have gone to shit and some of them have been perfectly fine. So just showing us where everyone's at in this season. And we even find out that Peacemaker and her got drunk and hooked up. Even though she thinks it's a mistake, Peacemaker's gonna keep trying to get with her, especially after finding out that his alternate universe self was married to her. So it's gonna be interesting to see their kind of relationship spark and develop in this season. We then have Peacemaker going home after he gets rejected by Harcourt and getting absolutely blasted on so many substances and having a party that we can't talk about on the internet, well, at least YouTube, because viewer discretion may be advised because it is definitely adult content. But then because he's so messed up, he decides to take his ass to the other universe so he could see and feel like a hero with his family who are still alive. However, while that's all going on, we end up catching up with Vigilante, who is still working at Fennel Fields, which he was doing last season, and he's calling Economos, and apparently he calls Economos every day to chat with them because they're friends. But this is where we find out that Economos was one of the few that never got let go from Belle Reve. He was still working and living there and doing his job as he once was before, and he still works for Argus, because then Sasha Bordeaux calls him, and Sasha Bordeaux from the comics is actually the bodyguard of Bruce Wayne, who later becomes an agent of the Black Queen of Checkmate. She first appeared in Detective Comics 751, that was released in the year 2000. So, interesting character. They changed up her character a little bit because now she's working with Argus, but we are going to be seeing a lot more of her this season as she works with Rick Flag Sr. While this is all going on with Rick Flag Sr. as well, we see the Spear News once again, which we saw during Superman, with the same anchor that interviewed Lex Luthor and Peacemaker during that movie, and we hear on the news that villains have been breaking out of both Belle Reve and Arkham Asylum, which means they're setting up Arkham Asylum being a rotating door just like it is in the comics, and Belle Reve as well, as villains are always breaking out and getting thrown back in there, and it would make sense to have this because that's what happens in the comics, and that's also how they could have a universe that's already established and not all the villains are already thrown in jail because they broke out, and we'll see them again. And that also means our heroes can go against them more than once. So like, let's say we see Batman, we'll know that he's gone against some of his rogues more than once in the past, and now he's going after them again because they broke out of Arkham Asylum. So just kind of setting up the universe and showing us how this world is already running. So I really like that little touch there. It's a nice little touch that kind of puts us in perspective about what's going on. However, we find out that Argus has been watching over Peacemaker because when he first opened the Dimensional Rift to go into his other pocket universe, it set off an alarm with Argus because of what happened during Superman and how Lex Luthor ripped Metropolis in two, which even referencing Lex Luthor and Metropolis. So like that they're adding that in there because Rick Flag Sr. was part of that movie, and they're just continuing the continuity that they've already established. And again, Rick Flag Sr. has returned after being in both Creature Commandos and Superman, so great to see him. And the thing is, a lot of people were talking about like how his hair wasn't white in Superman and how it's not white in Peacemaker, and James Gunn has come out saying that they just didn't get a chance to dye his hair white. But I'm like, why don't we just have it so he dyed his hair black? He's an older guy. Maybe he just decided to have his hair black after he left the Creature Commandos and had to run Argus. I feel like that makes sense. Rick Flag Sr. also says that Peacemaker is now priority 1 because of the Dimensional Rift. However, it's definitely not just because of that, because he wants to go after Peacemaker for killing his son, Rick Flag. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the moment that they two have to face off to see how Peacemaker is going to try to probably make up for what he did, because he does regret killing Rick Flag, and I do want to see that moment of Peacemaker trying to be a better person as he confronts the father of the man he killed. However, that's all we got for Rick Flag Sr. in this episode, and then we cut back to Peacemaker, who's in the new universe, looking over the achievements of his family in this universe, where it shows that the trio defeated two characters, the Rainbow Creature, who I thought was just a fake name. I thought it was going to be a different character in disguise, but the Rainbow Creature is actually a character from the comics, and he was a powerful inhuman behemoth found in South America. Each of its colors represents a different power, which it holds. When that power is used, its color turns white until it drains the same color from something else. Very interesting. Never heard of the thing before, but it first appeared in Batman number 134 from 1960. Then the other character they went against was the Ultra Human Knight, and if you've seen Stargirl, you would know who that is. He's a giant gorilla with a mega brain. However, the Ultra Human Knight wasn't always a gorilla. He started off as Superman's first reoccurring nemesis during the 1940s, and the way he got his powers was after a scientific experiment. He gained the most agile and learned brain on Earth. He was one of the greatest criminal geniuses ever, and eventually he would start transferring his mind from bodies to keep himself alive, which eventually led him to putting his brain into a giant gorilla. And he first appeared in Action Comics number 13 from 1939. So it's cool to get the Ultra Human Knight already referenced in this again, because he was in Stargirl not that many years ago, and I'm sure we'll see him at some point in the DCEU. Outside of this alternate reality. But as Peacemaker keeps exploring this new universe, we see that they have a bigger and better house than what he's living in on his Earth. And it's just showing that his family in this universe are big heroes, everyone loves them, and they're successful compared to what they are in his reality. So I really like how they're just showing it how big of a difference this is. Even showing as Keith, who arrives and says, hey, you're supposed to be in Bloodhaven, getting us a reference to Bloodhaven, the city that Nightwing operates out of. So great to see that. When the family is all together drinking and Peacemaker's listening to the stories, they talk a bunch about imps. Most likely it's the fifth dimensional imps, because in the first season they did reference Batmite, and then we did get a fifth dimensional imp during Superman as the Justice Gang was taking him down. So just cool to see how they kind of set this up, and how this universe is completely different from the reality Peacemaker is from. However, before we get into that final fight of the episode, we did get Hardcore getting into a bar fight, kicking some ass until she gets absolutely beaten and thrown to the curb. So I'm sure she's going to have an arc where she has to overcome her toxic masculinity and find a way to move forward after she was rejected from all the other government agencies. Then we have Economos filling in Adebayo about what happened with Peacemaker and about how Rick Flag Sr. is going to be going after him for killing his son, and how Argus is watching over him because of his portal. We're going to be having Adebayo try to look over Peacemaker. We have Economos watching out for him. Vigilante's going to come back, and I'm curious to see how these characters are all going to go back together to deal with whatever villain they're going to have to deal with. Because right now, we don't really have a villain unless his villain is going to be his father and his brother from the alternate reality, because of the Peacemaker versus Peacemaker match at the end of the episode. Peacemaker gets caught by his alternate reality self. He thinks he's a shapeshifter, and he throws these shurikens off his helmet that just follow him around and shred his back, which was honestly crazy. Peacemaker's helmets are insane. They bend reality, but at the same time, at least they add for some fun. However, we do get that scene of just our Peacemaker getting his ass absolutely beat by the alternate reality one, until our Peacemaker is able to hit the jetpack, sending the dude up into the spikes, killing him. Which begs the question about what might be happening now. That Peacemaker has now killed his other self. He's definitely going into the other reality, it was in the trailer, to become that Peacemaker. Live his life how he can. He already had Harcourt as a wife, so he's going to try to win her back, and he's going to try to live this fake life because he's tired of the shitty one and the trauma-induced one that he has on his reality. However, I feel like what's going to happen, he's going to try to do that, he's going to feel bad, he's going to come clean, and he's going to head back home because he's going to need to realize what kind of hero he needs to be, and that he can't be that on this alternate reality, especially a reality that doesn't have all his friends. On the same side, I think his alternate reality father and brother are going to become the villains who are going to go after him for get revenge for killing their Peacemaker. So I'm very curious to see how they're going to be doing things, how it's all going to kind of end up happening, and what kind of terrible things are going to happen to these characters, and how crazy it's going to get. And obscene. because that's what the show does best, is it gets obscene. But I'm looking forward to what's going to happen next. I'm looking forward to more DCEU setup, what's to come for this new universe, and I'm really excited for the future of the DCU after the last 3 projects. What did you think of this episode? Did you notice any other Easter eggs and references during it? Let's talk about it in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot, and you get to stay up to date with all my DC and Marvel breakdowns, as well as my anime reactions. Thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you next week when it's time to watch another episode of Peacemaker Season 2.